Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this intimate afternoon with Kathy Garver. We thank you very much for being with us. What was that? That was a special effect. We tried a special effect. How many people are from Chicago? How many people are from out of town? Where are you from? Right outside St. Louis. And you are from? Oh, I thought somebody said they were just outside of Chicago. California. Well, thank you for bringing this wonderful weather to remind you of why you live in California. Well, Kathy Garver flew in from California last evening as well. She will be here in a matter of moments. But I want to thank you very much. I'm Bruce Dumont. I'm the president of the Museum of Broadcast Communications. And if you are not a member of the museum, we invite you to join us. It's $30 a year. You get advance notification of things of this nature. And also, if you want to send an email or tweet to any of your friends around the world, what we are doing right now is live streamed around the world. So you can let people share people back in St. Louis where you are today. Your moderator for the day is a very special person. He is a noted author. He is an attorney. He's the political analyst for WGN Television. He also hosts Inside Politics, or Politics Tonight rather, for CLTV. He is regarded in the political field, and also he works and has worked for many years talking about show business and Broadway and theater for Comcast. So he's a man of politics, the law, showbiz, everything else. He also happens to be a very good friend of our guest, Kathy Garver. He also is a man who last year made a very generous donation to the museum to create the Paul M. Lisnek Gallery. If you have not yet seen it on the third floor, please, we invite you to do that. It has many of the collectibles that Paul has collected over his illustrious career that he shares with you, some very interesting things. And it's also in that gallery where we have our current exhibition called The Salute to Advertising's Greatest Icons. How many people have been to the third floor to see that as yet? Please make sure you do that before you leave today. And also I want to announce, because it was announced about 3 days ago, that our new exhibition, which will open on the 12th of January, will be Here's Johnny, the story of The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, many of the costumes that Johnny wore, the cue cards, the props, the photographs, and we're working with the Johnny Carson estate. So that will open, and that's going to run almost a whole year. It'll open on the 12th of January, and it will end on the 15th of October, and that will be in the Paul M. Lisnek Gallery. So without further ado, let me introduce the man of the hour, who will introduce the woman of the hour. Please welcome Paul Lisnek. Paul?
Shake that one. Hi, everybody. Let me just put the coffee down, the books down, and I appreciate your coming here. And as Chicago takes a turn in its weather, not for the better, but anyway, here we are. So I'm really looking forward to this because I've known Kathy Garver for several years, and we become good friends. I know you all know her. How many of you look so young, but how many of you are fans from Family Affair from when it first aired? Let's be honest. Yeah, okay, me too. But here's the thing. If you are Family Affair fans, what you may not realize is there is so much more she's done that I'm guessing you don't even know about. Just one example. Do you know she also appeared in The Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston? You know, yeah, she goes back to, the people in her life and the movies she's done and the shows and the live theater and whatever will astound a lot of you as we go through it. So my job today is to do what I do, which is to play TV host, and I'm going to interview Kathy and ask a bunch of questions, but we're going to involve you. You're nice enough to be here, and I'm sure you have come with questions. She's an incredibly approachable, nice person. I have to say, I've worked with a ton of celebrities. After this, I'll tell you some that are not nice, but Kathy is really one of the nicest that I've ever worked with, and so you will find her to be that way too. And if you are not a longtime fan from the late 60s, you will be after today. So as I said, it's Kathy's background, not just the television show that you know, but she has done guest shots in so many other television shows, series of movies, theater, on and on. But I told her I wasn't going to be very long in my introduction because I want her to talk about all of this. So we actually have a video that we're going to run first. I would like to run that first before Kathy joins me on stage, and I'll try and, I don't know where it's showing. I'm going to step out of the way, and here's a little video of Kathy's background.
Rebecca.
Here's the kneading trough. Sling it on your shoulders.
This is a blessed day.
Where's Rebecca?
Here's Rebecca.
And Caleb.
Thank you.
Can we take
But I'm sorry, girls. Miss Carson has to change her dress and go to the theater with her guests. Goodbye and good luck.
I told you we should have lined up right after school. But no, you had to. Look, that old man hadn't hawked so much time.
A 15-year-old girl is something else again. Sissy is a lovely girl. However, I am not happy about the way you just dumped her off, make that abandoned her on my doorstep while I was in the wilds of Peru.
I've thought it over and I want to go back to Terre Haute and live with the Graysons.
You do? You mean really?
I'm glad we have it settled.
What?
When you're a child like Buffy or Jody, it's easy to believe in the magic of people loving and caring. It was kind of foolish at my age.
Sissy, what's that mean to you, the magic of people loving and caring?
I'm not sure, Uncle Bill. I guess that's why I came to New York, to find out.
Miss Lee, cancel that letter. So Norton took another girl to Radio City.
In a blizzard.
Well, that doesn't mean anything. He still like you.
He hasn't called me once.
You still got brunch tomorrow.
He won't come for me in a blizzard.
Well, maybe it won't snow tomorrow. Maybe it'll just be cold.
That doesn't help. He only likes me in fair weather. I suppose you guys are going to arrest me.
Paula, answer me.
Yes, it's for the money. Of course it's for the money. How do you think I can afford to live? Anything's better than living here and feeling your criticism. You don't like my friends. You don't like the way I dress. You don't want me to be myself, just a carbon copy of you and Dad.
Oh, excuse me. I'm looking for the Ghostbusters. This must be the circus office.
No. We're the Ghostbusters.
You're the Ghostbusters?
Right.
Oh, in that case...
Operation Sightseeing. Is that the code name?
Get the tobacco. The hero.
Something tells me you've done this before.
My dear friend, Kathy Garver.
Hi. Can I
My dear? Oh, absolutely. Do you want? Yes.
It's my better side.
Fortunately, I don't have a good side, so.
Here, let me help
That
you
was my-
out.
Thank you. I'm all locked up, Kathy. My goodness.
There you go.
All right, here we go.
All right.
And I'm actually holding both books, not only Surviving Sissy, but the Family Affair Cookbook,
Yes, which was my very first book.
with all
And
sorts
there's
of.
more to come.
Yes. All right. So what we're going to do for a little bit is I'm going to ask some questions. We are going to invite you to join in, and there's a microphone here, at least there. So if you have a question, come join us in the conversation. But first, I want to chat with Kathy a little bit about her background. We will get to Family Affair. And I promise you, and all sorts of questions about it. I know that's the interest for so many of you, but there's other things I want to ask you.
Oh, are there, Paul?
Yes.
And what might those be?
First of all, I've read your book.
Well, thank you.
Larry King doesn't read books. I read books.
I know.
And one of the things you wrote in the book, and I found it interesting, you didn't start off the book, you sort of said it maybe halfway through, but you said, I never wanted to be a star. I just wanted to be a working actress. Talk about that, and what's the distinction?
Well, I think that there are so many things that one has to deal with, and especially now, and with celebrity. And what I really wanted to do was keep working. There are so many people that will get a starring role in a movie, or maybe two, and then you never hear from them again. And I did not want that to be my fate. I always wanted to be in the entertainment business. However, now, I think I would change that and said, well, why not be a star? I think that's pretty cool, and people are making millions and millions of dollars. But back then, it wasn't so much money, even if you were a star. So actually, I think I would change that young girl's attitude and goal.
But when we think of some of the folks that got impacted, we'll talk a little bit later about what happens to some of them.
That's correct.
One of the interesting things, and again, we'll talk about your castmates like Buffy, who was played by Anissa Jones. She clearly, as you write about it, she had a stage mom, right?
Oh.
She was guided by the stage mom. But your mother was pretty influential in your career as well. Would you call her a stage mom?
Absolutely not. She was the antithesis of the stage mom. And I think that also colored my career for a very long time because it was so put the kibosh on. I am in Chicago, right? Kibosh.
That works.
That's a Chicagoan word. That just came out. Put the kibosh on, oh, well, did you see me? I did that movie last night. And especially when you're a small child. And she really wanted me to try and be as normal as possible. So even when I was doing the 10 Commandments and people might question, well, where have you been? You know, why weren't you in school? And she said, oh, well, just say I was doing something else. Don't go say, well, I was starring with, you know, Charlton Heston in this great epic movie. And so that kind of, I never sought publicity. This was probably another error now. See? And now
you do it all differently.
Yes, but now that I have this book, I must say it is really fun going out to meet people and going on my Facebook and getting to know those people and going on Twitter and saying, wow, this is pretty cool. I should have done this before. And publicity is not such a bad thing. You get so many more experiences by engaging in that type of thing. And plus, it got to be #1 on Amazon for Hollywood history, and it won the best nonfiction book at Books by the Banks. Now, I never would have done that, hadn't I said, well, this not publicity thing is a bunch of malarkey. That's a California word.
I show up on page 229, by the way. So before we get to Family Affair, again, the movies you've done, and there's so many, but I want to really what I want to do is not ask about the movies per se, but the people you've worked with. Night of the Hunter, 10 Commandments. So for those folks who may or may not remember those movies, you worked with, I had to make a list, and this is such a partial list, Robert Mitchum, Lillian Gish, Shelley Winters, Charles Lawton, Peter Graves, Charlton Heston, Cecil B. DeMille. Cecil B. DeMille. I mean,
yes.
Yeah, I'm going to get to that specifically, but first, talk to me about the world as a child actress, as a young actress, what it was like to be surrounded. There's Robert Mitchum walking over. Was that amazing to you, or was it no big deal?
Well, I was such a young child, and as a child, you're not really aware of the stardom of some of the actors. There's more of a sensory quality, and you're thinking, wow, look at how big that personality is. Not in those words, but I was impressed by Robert Mitchum. Now, I don't know if any of you have seen The Night of the Hunter, but this was a very scary movie. It was way before its time, and it was like a German expressionist kind of black and white horror movie. And with Robert Mitchum, who played this very crazed preacher. And will you hold this for a second? So in the movie, he has L-O-V-E and H-A-T-E written on his knuckles. And he explains to the kids in the movie and other people how love fights against hate, and hate fights against love, and hate fights against love, and love fights against hate, and who is going to win? So this was very, kind of scary. So time passes. It did not get good reviews. Later on, it's like one of the top 10 horror films ever made, and so acclaimed. So as old as I am, I have a 24-year-old son. So I thought, well, when he was 9, it would be all right for him to see his mom as a child. I don't think he's ever recognized his mother as a little girl, just as a grown-up. So, okay, he can watch this movie. So I let him watch the DVD of Night of the Hunter. So he comes back and I said, well, hi, honey, how did you like that movie? Oh, I loved it, Mom. See? L-O-V-E, H-A-T-E. And I said, uh-oh, perhaps this was a misstep in my parenting path.
Not what I wanted you to take out of it. Yes. Let's talk a little bit about 10 Commandments. I mean, it's just one of the classic films of all time. And just, it's sort of scary to say you worked with Cecil B. DeMille. And here's what I think you can say that nobody else can say. He wrote scenes for you. Talk about that.
Well, I was hired just as an extra among the hordes of extra in this big epic movie, The Ten Commandments. And my first scene was to be on a little wagon going through a rutted road when the Red Sea was closing. This was at the Exodus part of the movie. So I'm on my little wagon, and I have a lamb, and all of a sudden I hear this big voice cry out, "Don't let that little girl's face get in the camera." I said, "Did he mean me? What did I do? Is that God?" We are doing the Ten Commandments, but it turned out it was not God. It was Cecil B. DeMille on this big crane and getting an overview of the whole scene. So we did that scene. My head was covered up, and then he descended on the big crane. I was lifted off the wagon. I go meet him. We chat, and then the associate producer told my mom, "Well, I think she's going to be on this movie a lot longer." What did that mean? Well, it meant that I was then on for 2 months. I had a principal part in the movie, and I was there in the big scene when the Red Sea closed. Now, imagine, if you will, we're on the Paramount stage. There's a big papier-mâché mountain built, and there's a road and another little mountain on the side. And to do this particular scene, DeMille had been setting up for like days for this. And on the catwalk above us were all these big vats of water. And when action came, all the water was to descend and get everybody wet. So we were almost all set up. And they had camels, and they had mules, and they had wagons and extras. And I was supposed to go from my perch in the mountain up into Nina Foch's arms. So finally, everything was set up. Now, DeMille worked with 3 cameras. He had one camera to get the master shot of everyone. Then he had another camera just to get another angle. And then, for good measure, he had another camera way up on the catwalk to get another angle. So finally, everything's set. He says, "Action!" And the camels go, and the mules go, and the wagons go. I climb up my perch. All the water comes down. It was great. He says, "Cut! Great!" He said, "Camera number 1, how was it for you?" "Oh, Mr. DeMille, I am so sorry, but a camel walked in front of the lens. I didn't get the shot." "You didn't get the shot?" "Mr. DeMille, I am so..." "Okay, all right, fine. Camera number 2. How was it for you?" "Oh, Mr. DeMille, I'm so sorry. The water splashed in front of the lens. I didn't get the shot." "You didn't get the shot?" So he was not a very happy director at this point. Then he remembered the 3rd cameraman way up on the catwalk. He said, "Cameraman number 3, how was it for you?" "Ready when you are, CB."
You tell that story in the book. I love that.
Well, that's a true story, and sometimes people call this an urban myth.
It was an urban myth, yeah.
Yes, and not only that, they wrote a whole play about this called Ready When You Are, CB, and it was based on that very same thing, but that was like in I Was There. Remember that? We are in a classic museum, so that was that TV show, I Was There, and I was, actually.
Did you ever say, "I'm ready for my close-up," Mr. DeMille?
I have in the past, but certainly not to him.
I love it. Yeah. What's interesting, too, is from all these roles, from that age into Family Affair, and we're getting to Family Affair very shortly, you almost never play your age, right? But the same is true with Jodie, Buffy. I mean, nobody's playing their age.
So you still think that I'm 39?
I do.
Well, I know. That's why we're good friends.
Yeah.
No, it helps to be like 5'1" and to have a little baby face. So I can kind of play that. Even with Family Affair, they wanted a 15-year-old, and I was really, that's it.
But it works.
Yes, it does.
Do you know, I actually have a question here. I'm not sure if it's appropriate to ask you about it, but you wrote about it, so it's up to you. You write a lot about the falsies.
Paul, I swear to God, I knew I should have looked at these questions before I came.
I said, I'm not going to show you my question, but you did. You wrote it.
Yes, and that was a very subtle lead-in to that. Yeah. Well, yes. Now, I think the first falsies was when I was doing an episode of My Favorite Husband, and I was
Lucille Ball.
Yes,
show.
that Lucille
Right.
Ball. Yeah, Lucille Ball did that on radio, and then CBS took it over, and then they made it into a TV show without Lucille Ball because they wouldn't use Desi. So then she went away and made her own I Love Lucy show to include her husband. So CBS still wanted to do My Favorite Husband, so they did a screen of it. So I was to play a little person, and because I don't know if they couldn't get anyone, but they wanted a little girl to be like a little person. So I really remember that so vividly. It's good news or bad news that I have this memory that I just remember everything, and I would rather forget a lot of things, but there it is, stuck in my mind. So I remember being in the canvas dressing room with my mom, and she says, oh, now go get her ready. And so I was wearing this little tight skirt and this sweater, and then my mom brought in these little foam cups things. And I said, well, what are those? Do they go under your arms? What are those for? She said, Kathy, don't you know what those are? Well, no, Mom. Then my face went as bright as this red sweater. I said, well, those are falsies, honey, and let me help you put them on. I said, okay. So I had a little bit of experience with that. And then when I did Monkey on My Back, which was a wonderful movie with Cameron Mitchell and Diane Foster, they're doing a remake of this movie. But I had to play a little girl who was 6 and who aged to 13. Now, I was about 11. And I said, well, I'm not going to have any problem playing the older girl and playing a 6-year-old, I don't know. So there I was, a flat-chested 11-year-old playing this 6-year-old, and then I got those nice foam cones again, and I did know what to do with them at that time. But I must say, when I have looked at that movie now, and I said, oh my gosh, I was much more believable as the 6-year-old. And I even had an Oklahoma twang then.
I love it. One of the reasons to read the book is just all about the falsies, but that was me. All right, Family Affair time, right? Let's go to that.
Okay.
September 1966 through 1971. For those of you sort of like, when was that on? That's when it was on. You were on Monday nights. You were on just after the Andy Griffith Show. And one of the things that struck me as I thought about it, and I remembered I watched it as a kid, but at the same time I thought, that's actually pretty late for a show about family to be on. Why were you on late, and did that impact anything?
Well, we were on late because the producers and writers originally thought that this fabulous show would appeal to older people because it was about this very sophisticated bachelor, and they were going to follow his escapades with all of the dates that he would have and take the ladies out in all. And the kids were just supposed to be on the side. So when they started showing the show, and then the children and the hot teenager became a little bit more appealing, and the ratings went up, they said, whoops, we're on too late, but it's such a great time slot, because it's right after Andy Griffith, that they just kept it in.
A lot of people think if I were to say to you, what is Family Affair, you'd say, oh, it's one of those situation comedies from the 60s. It wasn't. In fact, if anything, it's fair enough to call it, I think, a dramedy. And the episode that comes to my mind, because I watch it every Christmas, and the episode is Christmas Came a Little Early. And I got to tell you, remember that episode? And do you remember who played the guest star in that? Eve Plum.
Yes, you're right.
From the Brady. Yeah, a lot of Brady Bunch people in your show, too.
Yeah.
They end up there. We'll talk about one more. But anyway, but so I want to ask you, many of these episodes were very bittersweet. And some people remember it, some don't. But how do you feel about doing something that was a dramedy?
Well, and I had a sense that it was a dramedy even when we were doing it, because it certainly wasn't a laughing, joking kind of show. And there was always the underpinning that these were orphans, and they lost their parents, and they are like transplanted to a whole different kind of world. And Family Affair was a show that never forgot the backstory and that kind of tryst and sadness that was an underpinning. And it was a very situational kind of comedy, if you will. And it became a classic. And it was one, Family Affair had a lot of firsts. It was like one of the first, not dysfunctional families, but alternate kind of family lifestyle. And it was one of the first shows that was in color. We have that great big kaleidoscope so people don't forget, oh, look, this show is in color. And that will never go out of my mind.
Or mine.
Yes.
So you met Uncle Bill, Brian Keith. And some of you may know this, but you may not. You know, back then, to try and get a start, Brian Keith was huge. and Fred McMurray. That was all at the same time doing My Three Sons. So a lot of people are like, how do you ever, Don Feddersen, the producer, how did he get a Brian Keith? How did he get a Fred McMurray? They can't commit to, and these days, of course, a whole season is 13 weeks. It wasn't for you. It was, I think, 39 weeks, 36, 39 weeks to do a season. How do you get a Brian Keith to give you 39 weeks of his life?
You call yourself Don Feddersen. Don Feddersen was our producer, and he was a very bright man, and it was, I mean, big movie stars into that little tiny box, well, they're not going to do that. That was way beneath them. So in order to lure them, he said, look, you only have to appear in the TV series for 34 days, and then you're gone. And then you can go and do your movies. But that wasn't the biggest carrot. The biggest carrot was, if you do this, we will give you a piece of the show. What? An actor actually benefiting financially from the show itself without just being paid to be an actor? Well, this was the proverbial, can't turn down that offer, and he didn't. But what did that mean for the rest of the cast? What it meant was all of Brian's scenes were shot at the beginning of the season. All the scripts had to be done at the beginning of the season. We had one director for the whole show. And we would be shooting scenes for maybe 2 or 3 or 4 different episodes in one day, all the ones that Brian was in. Now, I have to tell the story about Paul and what is in Paul. Paul has a gallery.
I knew this was going to come up.
Oh, you have it! Did you get it out of the...
No, this is the other one.
Oh, that's the other one.
So I'm going to put this on for this story. Oh, you should put it on. This is Sissy's jewelry.
You better not give it to me. I'll keep it.
Yeah. Oh, no, you're not going to become a... No, you gave it to me. It's going to... So if you go... Let me just set this up this way. If you go up to the Lisnek gallery, I like saying that, you will find a very similar pendant to that hanging in the gallery from the show. And yet, there's this one. So how can that be, Kathy?
This can be...
She didn't know I was going to bring that.
I did not. Paul is always surprising me. Okay, well, this can be because of the way we shot. And we were doing an episode called Flower Power, a hippie episode. And so I was dressed as a hippie, and I had this wonderful medallion. So I was going to UCLA at the time, and I was going to a hippie party, and I thought, well, this medallion would just be wonderful to complete my outfit.
It's still fabulous.
Yeah, it is still good. You know you're old when you can wear your own vintage clothing and jewelry. So I said, this is a wonderful piece. So I just kind of borrowed it from the set to wear with my outfit. Well, fast forward a month later, and we're now picking up the same episode and scenes that followed my scene with Brian Keith. Now he's not in it, but I'm in it with my medallion. Where's your medallion, Kathy? My medallion? I don't know. Don't you have it, Miss Strom, my wardrobe lady? No, I do not have it. Okay, then. Well, then I had to admit shamefacedly that it was at home. So she sped out. She got another medallion that is very similar to this that you can see in Paul Lisnek Gallery at the Museum of Broadcast Communications in Chicago. And there are 2 of these.
And they're not quite the same. So if you actually watch the episode, you see the discontinuity.
Yes, yes. I just did a MeTV thing, and I was telling them that I have another one of this. So they're going to ferret it out and find and then juxtapose the one scene with the right medallion and the other with the other medallion. So, yes.
I love it. And you can take a picture of this one here because it's the only time you may ever see it. Yes. Mr. French, I love... Well, you're not huge fans of Mr. French. Everybody loved Mr. French. Sebastian Cabot, who I came to learn is Sabby.
Yes, Sabby.
Sabby. But he was not the original Mr. French.
Well, he wasn't the first...
Well, he was, but he wasn't supposed to be.
Yes. He wasn't the first choice for Mr. French. They wanted Terry Thomas, who was a big star in England.
You know him, the gap tooth? Yeah.
And a very funny person, and the production company was going to offer them kind of the same deal. But Terry Thomas did not like kids or dogs. Now, we had no dogs on our set, but we had a lot of kids. So he turned that down, actually. They even flew him out. He may have just wanted a free trip to America. He went back. And then there was Sebastian, who loved kids, actually.
And you were very close with him, right? You'd have dinner at his house? And
right, yes.
Yeah.
And he was quite different at his home where he was like laid back and cooking and, you know, had off his dignified Mr. French suit. So.
And some people, of course, he was Giles French, and some people remember, wait a minute, there were these episodes where he wasn't around, and his cousin was there. What was going on then?
Well, what happened, Sebastian had hurt his wrist, and he had to have wrist surgery. But again, from the way that we shot, we had already shot a lot of the scenes that Brian was in. So when they got his substitute, John Williams, who I adored, he was just fabulous, Sabrina's father, Audrey Hepburn's father, and Sabrina, one of my favorite movies. Anyway, he was on the show much, much longer. He did 9 episodes, and Sebastian would just hurry up and heal, and I got to get back there, because John was really delightful.
But because of continuity, they couldn't put him in.
No, they couldn't. No. The same thing happened with Anissa's leg. She broke her leg, and they would put her behind couches and here and there for shows that she had already been in without a broken leg.
So let's talk a little bit about Jodie and Buffy. They weren't really twins.
No, they weren't.
Right. So Johnny Whitaker, actually, he got the job through Brian, right? They worked together in
The Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. And they still are.
Yeah, nothing's changed. And Anissa, actually, one of the things I found interesting in the book about her, she was almost in The Exorcist. Not Linda Blair, it would have been Anissa.
After she finished Family Affair. But after she finished Family Affair, she was kind of done with show business. But she was offered the role of Linda Blair's part, Reagan, and she turned it down. She says, oh, no, I'm out of here. I'm not going to do any more show business.
I think most people know Anissa passed away, drug issues and all of that. So just tell us a little bit about, I have a question later about the child actor thing, but for now, were there issues back then? Was there pressure? What do you think led her to take that road? And you know, Johnny had some issues too. Those are public. You never did. What was going on?
Well, I think, you know, you indicated at the very beginning about stage mothers. And also, they didn't allow Anissa to grow up. So she was almost 8 years old when the series started. And at the end, she was almost 13 years old. And she still was wearing a little short skirt and had the little ponytails.
And carrying Mrs. Beasley around.
And carrying Mrs. Beasley. So I think that she didn't have the opportunity to grow up. And she didn't like to be squashed and say, I want to find my own identity. I'm not a little girl anymore. And so she went back. She met the wrong kids. They were all taking drugs, and that was very unfortunate.
Yeah, very sad.
Yeah.
One Brady Bunch thing. I said we come back to the Brady Bunch. I found this interesting in the books. I had no idea. So Robert Reed did a guest shot in the Brady Bunch. You don't do a lot of dirty dishing. You're very polite to people. But Brian Keith wasn't a big fan of Mr. Reed, was he?
No. Mr. Keith did not particularly like Robert Reed. Brian was a great guy, and he absolutely loved kids. But if there was someone he didn't like, he also was very, not vocal about it, but you could tell that he didn't like him. And he had... he had a very different style, Robert Reed, than Brian, and he was very kind of precise, where Brian was a real kind of moment-to-moment kind of guy. And he had all these women that came onto the set, and if he didn't like a woman that was supposed to be his date, he just wouldn't look at them. All through all the scenes, he just kind of look, yeah, that's fine. Where do you want to go? Okay, yeah, we'll go there sometime, you know? So he... Yeah, he just was, but he didn't like Mr. Reed. But Mr. Reed didn't care because he went out and their show took our show's place.
I was going to say, that was sort of in the end, the sort of the I'll show you, because when Family Affair went off the air of CBS, the thought was ABC would buy it, but ABC...
took the Brady Bunch instead.
Went with the Brady Bunch instead. So
yeah.
Robert Reed gets, I suppose, the last laugh on that issue. There was also somebody in the cast who... I'll let you you'll know what I'm talking about here, but sort of tied to the producer world, because of your relationship with this cast member who was a boyfriend of yours in the cast, thanks to him, you sometimes got fewer lines, right?
Well, yes. There's a lot of nepotism in the business, and Greg Federson, the son of Don Federson, played my boyfriend. Well, Greg really liked me, and I thought he was darling. He was a very sweet and nice guy. Young, I was older than him, and but when the producer, Mr. Federson, saw that his precious son was dating the help, as it were, I started getting fewer lines. But Our
Because he didn't want you to go out with him, right?
right, yeah. So our relationship ended, but we were still friends.
Even in Family Affair, people may not remember the guest stars: Nancy Walker, Ann Southern, Ida Lupino, Jackie Coogan. I mean, it's just sort of a who's who of these folks. And well, now you're a bit older as opposed to being the real child actor. So once again, were you sort of like, well, we're the stars of the show, welcome to our world, or you're like, wow, that's Jackie Coogan, Nancy Walker, this is pretty cool?
No, we were always pleased to have guest stars. It's difficult, I think, for a guest star to come in to an established series because there's a rhythm that starts, and then you have someone that's just coming in for maybe like 2 or 3 days, and they have to adjust. But I was impressed with I was impressed with John Williams and Ida Lupino and
Southern?
Ann Southern, because that was the first thing I ever did was the Ann Southern show when I was like 7 years old. So yeah.
She went on to be the Countess.
Yes, the
on
Countess.
the Lucy show.
Yes, right.
So for your personal life, so that people can get a little familiar with that and your personal life, I'm going to let you tell that story in the focus of your favorite episode of Family Affair, because as I read the book, I got the feeling that your personal life was a reflection of the episode called A Waltz from Vienna.
Ah, A Waltz from Vienna is like my favorite episode. And the character was kind of an amalgam of me and what the writers had envisioned and the backstory. But The Waltz from Vienna, I am a quarter Austrian, and I'm very romantic. And this particular episode, a prince is in love with me, Shades of Princess Diaries, and I thought, oh, well, yeah, I would like to be a princess. This is not a bad idea. So I'm in love with Karl Krug, I think his name was, and we fly to Vienna, and we're dancing, no Dancing with the Stars back then, I would have liked that. So we're dancing about, and then this girl turns him down. I know, now, I would not have turned him down, but my alter ego, Sissy, seemed to turn down this fabulous prince to go back. Yes, I was too young. I couldn't leave my family yet. I'd like to tell that to my 24-year-old son, who is still in the basement. And not only is he still in the basement, he invited his girlfriend to live in the basement with him. Now, our 20-year-old...
He's still living Night of the Hunter.
Loving it. No, I can't get rid... Not only, as I say, I can't get rid of him, he's inviting more people in. I said, read.
So I've got a million more questions, but I'm watching our time too, and we've got the book signing. So if you have questions, I'm going to let you know this will be the time to begin thinking about them, all right? And we'll come to you. I think we do need to have you do it in the microphone because we're recording and broadcasting, so I'll ask you to kind of step over there, and that's how I'll know you have one. But until I see you, I have many more. So, but I want to go to other activities in your life as well. We'll move beyond Family Affairs, so if you have Family Affair questions, feel free to ask them. But other activities, what people may not know is you were potentially, forget Eminem, you were actually our country's first rapper.
See, as I say, I should have looked at these questions beforehand. Yes, I had a manager, I think it was like in 1971. Is it that long ago? My. So he was the manager of Tommy Boyce and Bobby Hart, who had written the songs for the Monkees and The Last Train to Clarksville. He also had Zsa Zsa Gabor as a client. It was a very eclectic group. And there was me. So it was Christmas. It was about this time. And he says, well, I think that we should have Tommy and Bobby write a song for you. I said, okay, fine. I've been singing and dancing since I was 3 at Meglin's Kitty Studios. Okay, let's do that. So they wrote this wonderful little Christmas ditty called Lem the Orphan Reindeer. Lem standing for Lunar Excursion Module, because there was all this space travel. So I said, okay. And so I'm excited, and I practiced my song, and I was playing the piano. I said, oh, this is going to be so much fun. They had a little children's chorus. So I go to that Tower Records, you know, the one in Hollywood that goes round and round and round. So I'm walking, and so I start to sing, in the very midst of nowhere, Santa hollers, whoa. And then they sing, whoa. What? Whoa. And they sang, you're off key. I said, what do you mean I'm off key? I said, I've been singing since I was 3 years old. You're off key. No, I'm not off key. Well, you're off key. And I said, but we have an idea. Why don't you just say the words? Say the words. I know how to sing this. Say the words. So I recorded the whole thing with, in the very midst of nowhere, Santa hollered, whoa, it spied a tiny reindeer struggling in the snow. And then there's this children's chorus in the background. And that's why Paul calls me the first rapper.
Look out. I don't know any rapper names. I can't. Chance? I don't
No,
know.
Diddy.
Diddy, P.
Yeah.
Diddy, all these kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
I was way before them. In the very midst of nowhere, Santa hollered, "Whoa!"
Trying to get her to sing around the house is not easy.
Okay.
Now, again, and since, over the last period of years, and I mentioned this when I introduced you, but you're on stage, you just did Tom Sawyer. I mean, you were in so many different places, so I just want you to fill people in a little bit, and then once again, questions that you have for Kathy, we're going to go ahead and take them.
Yeah, you can walk right up to that mic. It's right over there.
Would love to hear from you. But talk a little bit about, voiceovers, but there's just so many things that you're doing. You never left the profession. You didn't, like some people, go into insurance. Yeah? Not you.
Well, you'll find in my book that once I finished doing TV, then I went on, and then I did stage, and then when I was done with stage, then I started a voiceover career. I recorded about 60 audiobooks, but I'll tell you one short story about Amy Tan. She was a wonderful author, and she had written a lot of books, and we did this one, Saving Fish from Drowning. And there is an award that you can win for audiobooks called the Audie Award. So we were nominated, and I called her up and I said, "Amy, isn't this great? We won the Audie." And she said, "Yeah, but when they first called, I thought I'd won a car."
She'd rather have the car?
Yes, but I have a little crystal plaque.
I like
Not
crystal
the
plaque.
same.
Yeah. Bruce, give us a crystal plaque. All right, we're going to come to you for questions. Hi there.
Hi there. Thank you for being here today. I just see so much friendship there. Can you tell us how and when you became friends?
Where did we first meet?
I don't even know. I don't know. We may have met. I think I was covering an autograph show. It must have been tied to that. You were doing, because Kathy she's wonderful in doing a lot of the autograph shows. And I work not only for WGN, but I work for Comcast. And I was did a show called Primetime Live, or Primetime Chicago. I forget the name. I introduced my show with the wrong title the other night too. Anyway, and we met there and went to dinner that night. And we've just become friends ever since then. Several years now. But yeah, so when Kathy comes into town, we spend a lot of time. And so, yeah.
I spend the night at his house.
Well, yeah.
But we're friends.
She gets her own floor. It's all fine.
Yes,
but,
it's good. And Miles and Matthew.
My dogs.
Those are the dogs.
So yeah, but she's, and you know what? She's so genuine and so really incredibly nice that yeah, no.
And
no
I
wonder.
make my bed.
Do you?
Well, unless my alarm doesn't go off.
Oh, can you just tell that? Do you care?
No.
So she arrived Thursday night. Friday morning, she had to be on You and Me on Channel 26, where she mentioned me, which was very nice. I was upstairs. I was sound asleep. I know she's going to leave, but I didn't realize. Well, I'll be honest. I went into her room for a moment to drop off some K-cups, and I went, "The hell happened in here?" My God, I've known her.
My room had exploded.
She's such a neat, clean person. This is and now you can tell them why.
Well, because I had to be at MeTV at 6:20 in the morning because I was going on at 6:50. So I dutifully set my alarm for 5 o'clock. Did it go off? No. And I awakened, and it is 6:06. I said, "You have got to be kidding me." Now, Paul lives 30 minutes from the studio. I said, "I have to go to the studio. I have to get dressed. I have to put my makeup on. I have to be there. I have to take a breath so I can talk." So I jumped out of bed. I put on some perfume. I brushed my teeth. I got dressed. I took a little suitcase. I went to the station, sped down the highway, got there, got in, put on my makeup in like 5 minutes. I said, "How many more minutes do I have?" 4 minutes. Okay, put on my eyelashes. One of the most important part. Got on the couch. I was there at 6:49. I could not believe it. They said, "Are you kidding?" But anyway, that's why the bed wasn't made. There were clothes all over the place. There were, and
I still don't know how she did. There's no way to wake up when she did and be there. So I don't want to ask how fast you were going.
I the angel on my shoulder.
You do.
Yes.
Hi there.
Hello, and I'd just like to say that it's a great pleasure to see you in person. You were one of the first celebrity crushes I ever had, and when I hear that music,
talking to Kathy, right?
It's like, oh, of course. Well, maybe. We'll talk later. Anyways, when I hear that music, it's like feeling like I'm a kid again. But the main thing I'd like to ask you about is, inquiring minds want to know, we hear so many stories about like Florence Henderson dating Barry Williams and things like that, the kid that played Greg. And You know, I was just wondering if you had any salacious celebrity gossip for us, or anything you can do, like make some news or something here for us.
I still told you this would come up.
And he did. But you know, really, there were not very many, and that's what the producer yesterday asked me, Rob Morheim. He says, "What are the juicy tidbits?" You know, in Family Affair, and I said, "Well, there really aren't any juicy tidbits. It was pretty tame." I think that the news comes when you look at the unfortunate things that happened to Anissa and Johnny, and I had some obstacles in my own life to overcome, things like houses burning down and my husband dying twice, and he's not dead anymore.
Oh, he's well, and he's doing
He's
great.
well,
Yeah.
and taking care of the dogs and watering and making sure the 24-year-olds are fed. And other things that are in the book. So I think that those things do make news, but it's more at the heart of people because everybody has something that's in their lives and some kind of obstacle that they have to get over. And I believe, and I say, you know, it's surprising to me when I have gone on the book tour and I have talked to people, how people think the book is inspiring. And I certainly didn't write it to be inspiring. I was just telling, you know, what happened in my life. And I think because it contains a lot of like love, and that our show was about that, and that one can kind of conquer things just by keeping going, and like never give up. So I think, no salacious. I've never done an X-rated movie, and I've never been to rehab, and so.
Well, let me just ask this. On the set, did Anissa, Johnny, was it a happy set? Was everybody getting along nicely?
People got along pretty well, but there were a lot of jealousies. I mean, Sebastian wanted his trailer to be, he would go out and measure, is my trailer as long as Brian's? Let me see, you know? And the kids would always be whisked away to PR things. And so he says, well, I want some more publicity. And me, I was just a teenager, wanted to go to discos, and, you know, I was finishing college. So those jealousies, you know, didn't really ramp over too much.
Okay. Other questions from you guys? Anything else? This is your chance. I'll give you this one last thing, because I know there's always I want to do it, but I'm afraid. So just one more chance. So because I haven't looking at you two back there, I'm getting the sense that one of you wants to ask a question, right? Am I right? I can tell. Do you want to ask something? You just look like you do. Okay. So I'll give you this last chance. But a quick question about the cookbook. So, you know, I mean, a lot of people write cookbooks and all that, but can you give us a little sense of, like, do you actually cook these things? Did Sabby make some of these things? I mean, give us the genesis of some of these recipes.
Well, the first thing is every time that a food was mentioned on the series, there is a recipe that goes along with it. And then each character has its own chapter. So the kids have a very, very easy chapter, and Sebastian's is gourmet food. Mine is Sissy Sizzles. And then Brian's, of course, is Potent Potables, how to mix cocktails. So they all kind of reflect the characters of the people that are in it.
By the way, when you were eating, when Sebastian was cooking, like at Andy Griffith, a lot of people thought that Aunt B, Frances Bavier, was this fabulous cook, and Jim Nabors is a friend, and he said she could not cook. So none of that. So, I mean, I think people thought Mr. French was making things. I mean, was that stuff all just catered, that you would have dinner and meals?
Well, that stuff was catered because it had to look a certain way, and there's food stylists, and it had to look under the camera and not melt. But when I would go over to his house for dinner, he really was a good cook, and he loved to cook, but he really liked to eat.
And he looked it.
He did.
All right, I have one last question for you. Last chance. Any other questions that you have? I'm still looking at you. Do you want to ask anything you want to know? This is a good time. The most fun thing you've ever done?
In my life? Going to Alaska with my son, who is, I think, 11 years old, and going up and taking a husky ride and being with, like, the wind and the... I love snow. That's because I'm from California. So I don't see it, and I am just enthralled with it. And to be on that husky ride with those dogs going and me pulling and my son just laughing, that is really the most fun thing I have ever done. That is, I love that.
Did you guys get to treat, you know, the Brady Bunch went to Hawaii, right? You had episodes like you were elsewhere.
We didn't go anywhere. We built New York. We built Tahiti. We built Austria. We didn't go
Yeah, you
anywhere.
refer to fake Tahiti in the book. That's why. Yeah, that's why I asked.
Yeah,
so
fake
my
Tahiti.
final question for you, Kathy, and then for those that want, if you're going to do the book and have her sign it, I know you'll do that, and you're very, very, very nice about that. A lot of stars from the recent decades, whatever, don't embrace their characters. I mean, they're angry about, go up to some, I won't mention names, but there are people that you can go up to some and they'll get angry at you for even talking about this character they played. You've embraced it. I mean, surviving Sissy, you don't pretend that you weren't Sissy Davis. Talk to me about the notion of why you embrace this versus not rejecting it.
Because it's a part of history. And as you say, I can't reject it. Wait a second. Oh, you look like, well, no, I never were. I mean, that's a lie. And I'm very proud of this series, and I'm very proud of the character, and I am glad that it's classic, and I'm glad that it lasted. There are some things that do not last. There are some things, TV shows that are made all the time that are like, oh my gosh. But this particular series, it had a great classic theme, it had wonderful actors, it was quality, it endures today because there is the same problems we have today and the same necessity for loving each other instead of yelling at them and killing them and, maiming them. And so that's one of the reasons, and it hasn't affected me. Yes, so I did that. I said, oh, well, and actors, it's really horrible because, I mean, losing a job is one of the highest thing on your angst list. Well, actors are always losing jobs. You get a job, and well, that's great. And now you don't have a job. Oh, you get another job, then you don't have it. So it was great to have a nice, steady job. But it gave me enough ballast that I could go on, and I invested my money, even though it was very slim at that time, like in 66 to 71, and we only got residuals up till the 10th run. But what I did do was invest it, so I had a little bit of a mattress to, then if I didn't get a job, I could go do a play, or I could start my voiceover career, or do some other, I could now write, and I'm producing films and acting in films, and so it's probably not apparent to you that I was a speech major in college. You just tell me to shut up and do the bottom line. I do tend to go on a bit.
But I'm glad you do.
Well, thank you, Paul.
All right. My pleasure. Please help me thank Kathy Garver, the wonderful actress and author.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
It's so fun to work with you this way. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Dumont.
Thank you very much. If you would like to make your way to the autograph table, which is right next to the bookstore, Paul will take you over there. Copies of the Sissy book are $30. Portions of the proceeds will go to the museum, and the cookbook is available for $25, and you were able to sign both. And if you would like to head over there, just so you don't get trampled by the masses, we thank you again for joining us in Chicago.
Thank you.
Paul.
Thank you,
Sissy,
Bruce.
very much.
Really appreciate it. Thank you all so much for coming.